We are pleased to present the 2011 Bradley Prize to Allan Meltzer.
I'm greatly honored to receive this award. Just a glance at the accomplishments of past and current recipients on the walls makes one aware of the company I was invited to join when Michael Grieber called to tell me that I would receive one of these four awards for 2011. I am humbled, proud, and grateful that I have been selected to join this distinguished group. The Bradley Foundation has supported my work for many years. I share their commitment to the never-ending task of strengthening democratic capitalism. For many years, I have taught a course called Democratic Capitalism to MBA students at Carnegie Mellon. I may exaggerate when I tell people that it is the only course taught in a major American university by someone who believes that democratic capitalism is one of mankind's great ideas. It is the only system the world has developed that provides both economic growth and personal freedom. Shortly after the current economic crisis began, the New York Times ran a series of stories about the end of capitalism. Several journalists called to ask whether I agreed that that had happened. The sixth call was from a German reporter for a leading Hamburg newspaper. She asked the usual question: did I think we were witnessing the end of capitalism? I told her that was the most stupid question I had been asked in about 40 years of answering journalist questions. She hung up. So she missed my question to her. I said, look around at Asia, Latin America, and even Africa now. Capitalism has spread from a small enclave in Europe and North America to much of the rest of the world. Do you see evidence that capitalism is failing or ending? Some wonder whether capitalism can survive in a democratic country. Back in the 1830s, Alexis de Tocqueville raised that issue. He recognized that democratic capitalism gave voters the right to gain benefits by taxing their fellow citizens, especially the minority that had the highest incomes. That didn't happen here until the 1960s. During the years from the founding to 1930, the country had a small government. Peacetime budgets were balanced. Government had a small share of national spending, about 3 or 4% in 1900 or even 1930. The federal share has jumped to 25% in the past 2 years. The genius of the founders of our democracy is shown once again by requiring an election every 2 years. Having voted for change in 2008, a majority decided that the change they got was not for the better. No one reaches this podium without the help of many people. At the top of my list is my wife of 60 years, Marilyn. I was blessed also to have some great co-authors. The late Carl Brunner was my teacher, friend, and collaborator. Scott Richard and Alex Kuckerman helped me to think about political economy, why some people prefer to sacrifice future growth for more consumption now. Over the years, I've received support from my friend Richard Scaife and his foundation, from my friend and former student Henry Galiot, and from my intellectual home, Carnegie Mellon. In 1994, I began to write the history of the Federal Reserve. Without the support of Christum Youth and the American Enterprise Institute, I would still be toiling away in the archives like a character out of Kafka. I thank each of them for helping me to pursue the interests that attracted me and helped me better understand why government agencies act as they do. President Woodrow Wilson prodded Congress to pass the Federal Reserve Act in time for Christmas 1913. The original creation was an agency with limited responsibilities. It was independent, so it couldn't finance government spending. President Wilson was so committed to Federal Reserve independence of government that he didn't invite its officers to the White House social events. How times have changed. In the beginning, the gold standard controlled inflation. As long as the Federal Reserve followed gold standard rules, the country could avoid inflation and deflation. I have never been a proponent of the gold standard, but I strongly favor a rule that prevents the Federal Reserve from its current wildly inflationary policy. Once the gold standard ended, the Federal Reserve could choose its policies. By the 1960s, it was pressed to lower interest rates and print money to gain a temporary increase in employment. By the 1970s, the cry was jobs, jobs, jobs. Inflation rose, but the unemployment rate rose also. Paul Volcker became chairman in 1979. Supported by President Reagan and Congress, he brought inflation down and restored Federal Reserve independence. For the next 15 years, the country enjoyed steady growth, small infrequent recessions, and low inflation. Current policy has sacrificed independence and low inflation. No country anywhere, ever, that has high budget deficits, fast money growth, and a depreciating currency has ever avoided inflation. On our current path, we will not be the first exception. At various times, Federal Reserve discretionary policy gave us the Great Depression of the 1930s, the Great Inflation of the 1970s, and several smaller recessions. It facilitated the recent financial crisis, then saved the financial sector by the shifting costs to the rest of us. We cannot expect to avoid these mistakes in the future unless we make the Federal Reserve follow a rule and eliminate too-big-to-fail policies that protects banks at public expense. Many of us complain about the growing role of government, restrictions on the rule of law, short-sighted policies, and the growing size and power of government. One of my teachers comforted me this way. Allan, he said, that just gives us more to do. I expect to remain busy. Thank you, and special thanks to Michael Grebe and the Bradley Foundation directors for this wonderful award.